Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and I've been having a play with the new and improved Samsung Galaxy Fold, with the big new feature that it shouldn't break as easily. So in the 5 months since Foldgate, where reviewed devices were breaking, Samsung have tweaked the design so the screen protector, which you may remember a load of tech reviewers thought they could peel off, but actually it was part of the screen, well now it's been extended under the bezel, the plastic lip thing that goes around the outside of the screen, so you basically can't see it anymore. Samsung has also added new protective caps at the top and bottom of the screen by the hinge, and they've also reduced the space between the hinge and the main body. So it's a more seamless design than the original, plus it helps stop dirt and other rubbish getting in and damaging it. So it's been fixed. Well, according to Samsung at least. We'll have to test it properly and review it before we know for sure, but let's assume it has been fixed and it won't break. The big question still remains, should you actually buy the Galaxy Fold? Because you can buy it right now in Korea, and in the UK it's coming out on September the 18th, 27th in the US, for a whopping £1,900 or $2,000. So that's an awful lot of money, and actually slightly more expensive in the UK at least than we first thought, by 100 quid more. But that's because we're getting the 5G version, not the cheaper 4G one. And despite the delay, it's still the first major foldable phone to hit the market, beating Huawei's Mate X. So you've probably already seen a whole bunch of videos on the Galaxy Fold, but if you have been living under a rock, you're getting a 7.3-inch dynamic AMOLED display, near enough a 4x3 tablet essentially, that folds down the middle, and then you've got the 4.6-inch Super AMOLED cover display, which has a taller 21:9 aspect ratio, and which I'll be honest is my biggest issue with the Fold, but I'll come back to that in a second. We also get a Snapdragon 855 along with 12 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and it's all powered by a 4380 mAh battery. There's also 5 camera lenses on the Fold, 2 on the front for selfies and 3 on the back, including a 2x telephoto and an ultra-wide. So there's a lot going on here. Now, whether you love or hate the idea of a folding phone, I think we can all agree it is a very cool concept and it's very futuristic looking. And of course, these sort of engineering and technical hurdles that Samsung's had to overcome to actually make this thing is pretty impressive in its own right. And when you pick it up and use it in person, you can't help but have a smile on your face when you're playing Asphalt 9 on the full screen tablet, and then when you fold it closed, it seamlessly carries on the front screen. It's running Android 9 with Samsung's One UI software, so if you've used a recent Samsung phone, it'll feel pretty familiar. The main difference is by default, the navigation keys are now at the bottom right, so if you're holding it open in tablet mode with one hand, which is surprisingly comfortable actually, you can reach them with your thumb. You can move it back to the center or to the left if you prefer, or even swap it for gestures if you want in the settings menu. When the keyboard pops up, it's split over the 2 screens, which again feels like a smart solution, but then obviously it means you need to use it with 2 hands. So apart from the nav keys, there's nothing really new here in terms of software, but they're still making a big effort to make it easy to have multiple apps side by side to make the most of that big screen. When you do unfold it, or if you have a dark home screen, you can just notice the fold in the plastic, but honestly, you quickly forget about it. It really didn't bother me. So that's just a quick roundup of the phone, but let's move on to a couple of the issues I have. And let's start by talking about tablets, Android tablets, because while I think Samsung do make the best Android tablets on the market, the new Tab S6 is great if you want a big screen Android experience, but I also think only about 4 people actually buy it. Because while I am primarily an Android user, when it comes to tablets, I just don't think you can beat the iPad for UI experience and a wider range of tablet optimized apps. Samsung tablets do have nicer AMOLED screens and support for things like DeX, which about 1 of those 4 people will actually use. So I guess the question is, if very few people actually buy Android tablets, how many will want to pay 4 times more than your typical Android tablet for that experience on a folding device, which then has a very small screen up front as well? I'm not sure. Well, it is a bit different because you still have that front screen, but that brings me on to my other issue, which is it's just too small. It's interesting, I was actually talking to SuperSaft while I was in Berlin for IFA, where I got hands-on with the Samsung Fold, and we kind of both agreed that this definitely feels like a first-gen device, which of course it is, but there's definite room for improvement. I mean, you can see maybe that Samsung's held back in some areas, such as having that fairly small screen, the fairly thick lip around the screen, and of course that high price. All areas I can definitely see being improved upon next year, particularly that front screen. Now that's not to say the front 4.6-inch screen is unusable, but the taller 21:9 aspect, and of course having that huge tablet screen inside, does make it feel really small and kind of claustrophobic to use. And so except for checking notifications, notifications or maybe typing the odd message, 90% of the time I'd want to use this in tablet mode. And so I think for me, that is the biggest reason why I would not buy the current Galaxy Fold and hold off until next year. If that front screen was bigger, like the Huawei Mate X, and if it was maybe £1,500 rather than £2,000, I'd say it's maybe worth considering. But for now, while I genuinely do love this thing and really appreciate it being something a bit different, unless you really want something shiny and new that you can show off to your mates, I'd hold off until next year. But I will caveat that by saying that this is not my final review. I've only had a sort of updated hands-on with it, so we'll have to see whether it actually does break and what it's like to use in the real world when I come to test it in my full review. But what do you reckon? Do you think folding phones are a good idea, and are you tempted to buy one? Let me know in the comments below. And if you did enjoy the video, it would be amazing if you could hit that little like and subscribe button down there and ding that little notification bell so that I know to keep making these sorts of videos and so that you don't miss out on the next one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chap.